Welcome back to Playable Leagues, everyone. My name is Dylan, and welcome to the first ever episode of DillitDives, a series where we will take a deep dive on a particular gaming-related topic, and I'll share some personal stories and opinions relevant to the game in question. I basically just want to provide some longer-form, higher-quality content to give you guys and myself a break from the Let's Plays, and give me a chance to indulge myself in one of my many passions, writing. I hesitate to call this a video essay because I watched some videos on that specific format where guys in that community made some good points as to what to do and what not to do. And it was intimidating for sure. But I did write an extensive script complete with research and notes, and I'm just guessing this video is going to be pretty long. So yeah, this is my first time trying anything like this, and I am pretty nervous. Today's topic is about one of my favorite game franchises of all time, Football Manager. I wanted to delve into my history with the sport and how I fell in love with soccer, or as we called it in my family, football, and why I think that this love was rediscovered through Football Manager. I want to make a quick note for the remainder of this video. I will refer to soccer as football and American football as American football. If you like this content, be sure to like and subscribe for more videos like this. Leave a comment with more ideas for future long-form videos. And without further ado, I present to you Football Manager, Reigniting the Flame. As a kid in America that grew up mostly in the 2000s and 2010s, football was something that we did as kids. It was insanely popular and common for kids I went to school with to be involved in the local recreational league that fielded little bumblebees all the way to the sweaty tryhards known as 13-year-olds. Football was on the rise when I was a kid, with a concussion scare surrounding American football scaring every suburban mom that her little baby would be decapitated by another kid. It permeated through the schools that I went to, and while it may not have been as popular as basketball or the aforementioned American football in which feet are hardly used, you didn't have to look far to find someone else who enjoyed playing the sport. All throughout middle school I played, and at the start I was terrible. I actually remember my first game. I didn't have a chance to go to any of the practices because I registered late. So I showed up to the first game, I went out on the field, we're doing warm-ups, kid kicks me the ball, we're supposed to shoot at the goal, and instead of just one-tapping it in, I take 10 paces back and then sprint up to the ball like a little kid running up to a kickball. And kickball is going to be relevant in a second, just wait. After playing a few years and using most of my free time to hone my skills, I was pretty okay, and I actually really enjoyed playing football. That was until I broke my leg in 7th grade, right after the season in a life or death game that only true gladiators would appreciate and understand. Kickball. That's called a callback, ladies and gentlemen. Comedy gold. Put it on the screen. Comedy gold. I was pretty devastated by this injury because it would mean that I couldn't do anything for close to 2 years. I was in a cast for a while and then a brace, and I did physical therapy, and the doctors finally cleared me a year and a half later for athletic activity. By then I had hit the growth spurt of puberty where the Samoan genes kicked in and I bulked up. I felt like I was just too big to play football, and so my feelings around the sport became extremely negative. I was heartbroken and afraid that, in a way, as much as I had improved and as much as I had loved the sport, my body would just give out on me again. I remember having this phobia of running to second base in kickball, which is where this fabled breaking of bones occurred. For the months to come, I didn't want to get hurt all over again, so oftentimes I just wouldn't even kick and just sit on the bench because I didn't want to have to run. After being able to participate in some PE my 8th grade year, I had begun to trust my leg a little bit more. When I reached high school, I played a year of American football and did 2 years of wrestling. I felt that feeling of camaraderie again, the late night bus rides home from a wrestling tournament, the smell of ball sweat, eating lunch with my friends on the American football team, but it wasn't the same. I remember around this time my dad tried his best to get me into watching the Premier League games with him on the weekends when I didn't have practice or games. I just couldn't sit down with him and force myself to watch it. I had begun to hate the sport due to my inability to play it. Most of the football I would get would be in the form of FIFA after my leg break. My grandmother had bought me a PS3 as a get well soon gift back when I broke my leg, and when I got it, one of the games I started with was FIFA 10. I had played FIFA before with my dad, but this was the first FIFA game that was mine, and it was the only football I could get at the moment. Thinking back on it, I noticed something weird. Since I got hurt, I just started to feel so depressed regarding football, and I felt like it just wasn't realistic in my head to put me on the field. So instead I would create my fictional son to play my careers with, and I would write stories to make his career more interesting and in-depth with backstory and well thought out plots on how he could have possibly ended up in Europe on the grand stage. This is a love of mine, and I would share it with all of my friends when I would write stories about my son turned player, and it's a passion that I still share with one of my best friends to this day. It was FIFA 15 when I would change my approach to FIFA's career mode, a decision that shaped my returning love for the game that I felt was stolen from me. It's 2014, and my dad's favorite football team has a massive summer in the transfer window. Arsenal had spent money on a player that I saw perform out of his skin in the World Cup, Alexis Sanchez. The transfer window started to interest me greatly, which was foreign to American sports. For those of you who are from Europe, players that move in any of the major sports here in America typically are traded for draft picks and or other players, or they just let their contracts run out and become a free agent, which allows any team to offer them a contract. The idea that nobody was necessarily safe if enough money was thrown their way made me see the potential in managing a club on FIFA. I could virtually buy anyone I could afford, and every season I could feel the different lineup of players that I had purchased. When I got FIFA 15 for my birthday that year, I started a career with Arsenal. I don't remember much of what I played on it, but I do remember that I fell in love with managing after I won the Champions League with a goal from a youth player that I had brought up since he was 16. This quickly turned to me taking on the ever-popular rebuild challenges, where I would take a team from the 4th Division of England and try to make them into a Premier League champion. However, I would quickly become bored of the diluted experience that had been the FIFA career mode. Much of the success in this game was boiled down to exploiting the youth mechanics, where it's basically impossible not to climb the league structure quickly. Eventually, FIFA got stale, and it continued to feel that way for some time. They removed the ability to make clubs when the last console generation started, and only recently brought it back for FIFA 22. EA instead chose to focus nearly all of their attention to the real thing they love: making money. Microtransactions. Making little kids gamble. The game never changes much, with only the last few FIFA games making any effort on the career front at all. Because of this reluctance to change and doubling down on Ultimate Team, I became bored with FIFA after playing it for so long. I did play a few of the PES titles in the last few years, and I loved the ability to make clubs as well as gameplay which felt more weighted and realistic than FIFA's. I would often make clubs that were composed of all of my friends and family members at different positions, and many of them would follow along on Discord or ask if they could share play a game on PlayStation so they could watch our team perform. This was an immense amount of fun, and for a little while, FIFA was overshadowed by PES in my opinion. However, this too just didn't always scratch the realism itch in terms of total management experience. PES did offer slick cutscenes and an overall better management mode, but its lack of teams and playable leagues always kind of bothered me. I felt like there just wasn't enough. Also, this new PES game isn't looking too promising. So we've established that the embers that are the love for football were starting to glow once more, albeit a little dull from football game fatigue. Now it's the summer of 2017, and my mom had offered to buy me a computer if I promised to pay her back over time. Biggest mistake she ever made. She said I could get whatever I wanted, so I ran upstairs and got on HP's website. I built a monster of a computer and put all the best components available in its obelisk-like case that they sold. This PC was amazing. It was the most expensive thing I ever bought myself, and I was so excited to just touch that mouse, baby. For years, I wanted a gaming computer. When I was in high school, I was always watching League of Legends videos or DayZ videos. I just saw this vast variety of games that never seemed to make it to console. I remember seeing PUBG for the first time and being so excited for my computer, which is crazy because I ended up hating battle royales. I just don't like them. I don't get it. Why do you guys like them? They're gross. They smell. Ugh, put them in the trash. They're gross. I was on a date when my computer arrived after 4 weeks of waiting, and I remember telling the girl that I had to go home because my mom needed me, and I ditched her to go play on my computer. Yeah, that was real smooth, Dylan. Good job. But it worked out because Nadia's here.
Oh.
My monitor, keyboard, and mouse had been sitting there staring at me as if they knew I couldn't wait. But when my PC arrived, that's when this 4-year addiction began. I only had PUBG when I got my PC, and that would be a game that I would play 2 times and then never again. I threw it in the trash. As I looked through the massive catalog of Steam titles, I was overwhelmed with just how many games I wanted to play. My neighbor, who had also just got a PC, had me come over and we played FIFA together, which reminded me that I would love a football game on my new computer. But I was tired of FIFA and PES was stale at this point, so I decided to look at other options. There wasn't a ton of prominent soccer games that were just what I was looking for, but then I remembered something that would change my gaming life forever. I remember that when I was in high school, my dad was talking about a management sim game that he had been playing on his work laptop, where you got to take over a team and control them. I remember he said that it was infinite and you could play well over the 15 years that FIFA capped you at, allowing you to build a team and then move countries and start over. So I went home that day and I looked up soccer coach game and I found it. The Golden Snitch, the Shiny Sudowoodo, the Coelacanth? I don't know what the best Animal Crossing... Nadia, what's the best Animal Crossing fish?
I don't know.
We're fucked. We found Football Manager 17, okay? The joke didn't land, I'm sorry. 18 was right around the corner, but I had no idea when these games were released every year, so I downloaded it and instantly realized I knew nothing about football anymore. I started out with Arsenal and I thought, who was one of my favorite Arsenal players back when I used to watch? Oh, I know, Andre Arshavin. So I went and bought him, and I got feedback that the fans were pissed at me because I didn't know what I was spending my money on. Wait, guys. Are you telling me you don't want a 35-year-old Andre Arshavin? I mean, I really think that's what the club needs. Sure, he's not a fresh set of legs anymore, but I mean, Look, man, every year, Arsenal can use the help, right? Right? So like I always do with a new hyperfixation and the power of my ADHD, I took to YouTube to fill my brain like a jelly donut to the brim with creamy Football Manager knowledge. And I still sucked at the game. When I bought FM18, it was more of the same. I was terrible. Then FM19, I got a little bit better. And then 20 and 21, I really started to get the hang of it. But what kept me coming back if I wasn't great at the game? It was the depth that's unmatched in the sports game genre. Because EA has sort of a monopoly on the biggest sports games aside from 2K, their watered-down approach to making games touches every single series they make. I don't play many EA sports games aside from UFC and FIFA, so I reached out to my friend Kay to cover some of their other titles, and we'll be hearing from him later. But we should probably back up. Many of you might be asking, what even is Football Manager? So let's start with that. Now, I called this section brief, but we'll see how that works out because the rest of this video is long as fuck. Football Manager started out as Championship Manager when it was released in 1992. The game saw a steady stream of revenue and its reviews were all over the map. The franchise would go on to sell different installments over a decade later until 2003, when some bad blood in the poor launch of Championship Manager 4 caused Sports Interactive to cut ties with BIDØ. The game studio may have lost the Championship Manager franchise, but they got to keep the source code and the data that they had created for the series. SI would go to join Sega and create the new series of football simulation games where you were thrown into the hot seat of a club known as Football Manager. Championship Manager and the newly created SI Football Manager would release side by side and compete with each other, but all of that eventually would be left in the past as Football Manager came to totally eclipse its predecessor. Now that we've discussed the history of the franchise, let's talk about what a player can expect out of the newer Football Manager games. For this section, I will be using FM21. I know, FM22 is out, but when I wrote this, it wasn't on Game Pass and I'm broke. So subscribe, please. Football Manager sees the player take on the role as manager or head coach at a football club of their choosing. As you take the reins of the club, you'll be given goals and an overall vision of where the board wants to see the club over the next 5 years. The game now offers in-depth looks at each of its systems called inductions that serve as sort of tutorials and give players a basic feel for things like setting up a training regimen, how to add clauses to contracts, and I don't know, a bunch of other shit. We stated earlier that FIFA caps the career at 15 years in length. So what about Football Manager? The PC version of the game is truly infinite in terms of how long your career can be, and I believe that's also true of the touch versions on consoles. So a single game in this franchise can be well worth the money in terms of replayability and actual game time. I've seen on one of the Football Manager subreddits that in one example, a player is still playing an older version of FM where he's 90 years into a save. When he gets too old to realistically coach a club or even be alive, he makes his son or daughter, and then their son or daughter, and then their son or daughter, and starts at a smaller club to build that person's career up and give them longevity in the game and keep them interested. Football Manager is a game with a steep learning curve, but its gameplay is really rewarding when all the systems are understood. It can be the heartbreaking defeats in a battle against relegation, or the triumphant victories where your small club from Norway slays a giant in the Champions League. It's a game that has an immense amount of love and detail put into every part of it, and it knows its core audience. It speaks to people like me who don't really like the on-the-field action as much, but instead like having that randomness that allows it to feel real. The fact that you just can't control a player, run down the right flank, and score a goal into the top bin to make the game even makes me love and fucking hate this game so much sometimes. You feel the pressure of being a manager, and in some cases the constant threat of being fired is held over your head. Speaking of loving the game, let's talk about my favorite parts about Football Manager, girl. Regions are procedurally generated players that the game uses to refill spots of retiring players as they age out of the game. These are youth prospects that the club will sign onto their youth team. Now, unlike the last FIFA game I played, you can't just send a 16-year-old out into training and then force a spot into your starting 11 to turn him into a superstar. I love that the region system is a craft of its own. It takes years for a player to realize his potential, and given certain circumstances, they may never actually reach that potential. They start out in your youth setup and play games for your youth team to get familiar with your staff and get some game time. This allows them to build relationships with the club and allows you to get feedback from your staff on the developments regarding that player. Around the age of 18 is when you'll take stock of them again. If they're looking like a decent player, you can send them out on loan where they'll get more first team experience. Finally, if they pass all of these stages and are still looking like they can offer some help to your club, then you would put them into your reserves where they'll fight to get a spot on rotation and then maybe even first team. This system is so dynamic and it takes so much care and time. I love it. I love that you cannot just force a player into your starting 11 with a half-star quality and eventually he just grows. Every player feels different and they all have personalities and hidden stats that can help them all feel like real people. Offer a player a big contract before he's ready. He may cave to the pressure and never reach the heights like he was supposed to, like a Freddie Adu. Send him out on loan where he dominates a league but then he suffers a tragic injury. He may never be the same or may have recurring injury problems now. These players are incredibly important to building the future of your club. Not every single one of these players will be your next superstar, but you begin to appreciate the ones that aren't because they can still be a source of income and help stabilize your club when you get that highly coveted promotion. This adds an infinite amount of depth to the game for someone like me who loves bringing up the next generation and having them turn into first team regulars that can carry your club into its new era. The depth of Football Manager is in its gameplay systems, its database, and the amount of love that the devs put into crafting an experience that can be enjoyed by its community. The sheer number of possible teams you can take control of is one of the reasons I love the game so much. Remember when I said that PES was better than FIFA but lacked the options? It never felt like there was enough, and the football world felt a little shallow. There's something here for everyone. If you want to run an already successful club and continue their league dominance while looking to also dominate in Europe, you can. If you want to start off small and realistic before building yourself into a journeyman that takes the next step when it becomes available, you can. If you want to start off with a sleeping giant that you can return to their former glory, you can. Football Manager boasts 117 playable leagues from 52 different countries. This game has a gigantic database that really helps the world of FM feel lived in. Now, I know we don't typically talk about sports games feeling lived in, that's more of a RPG kind of deal, but I think it's because the sports game in question usually only has one league in its focus. There's only one NFL, one NBA, one MLB, and while you're constantly looking through prospects to draft, you know that players can only move between the small group of teams in your league. So I feel like when you start playing a sports game that's based on an American sport, it doesn't really matter if the world around you feels lived in or not, because the world around you is pretty small. This isn't to say that crowds and other titles aren't a big part of the atmosphere or anything like that. It's more so that, like, in a game like FIFA, we don't typically notice the coaches don't even move around between clubs because they're basically just cardboard cutouts that stand on the field and ultimately have no consequences or autonomy. Whereas in Football Manager, these assholes will sometimes come at you over your choice to play aggressive football, and when you beat them, you rub their nose in the shit pile they made to teach them a lesson. What I mean is, the coaches in the world feel alive. There is so much to keep track of and so much detail and attention to said detail that the world feels like another reality where the player feels as if they're a part of that football world. The inclusion of realistic rules like promotion and relegation and the sheer amount of leagues that are available mean you have to venture out into the world more or less and keep track of multiple leagues and countries. Players get bought and sold and loaned out, and it all just feels real and competitive and alive. This isn't even mentioning the editor, so a real quick side point. There are two editor tools available with Football Manager. One is a paid in-game editor where for a couple extra bucks you can make live edits to your save then and there. The other one comes with the game and is a pre-game editor where you can pretty much edit or create anything to add before you start a save. These give you a lot of control in your save and have sprouted up some awesome videos by the community, but we'll get into those later. The pre-game editor is where I think most of the power of this duo of tools comes from. With it, you can make a player to add to your favorite team or a team you wanted to add to a league you wanted to try your hand at. My most ambitious and time-consuming project was creating a new American football pyramid complete with promotion and relegation and a whole host of new teams with some of my friends as the owners. The editor allows you to make the game that you want to play and just opens up one iteration of this game to last you well into the future. I guess what I'm getting at here is that it feels like FM cares, because they adopt a different approach from other sports games, at least since I've been playing. I'll go back to how we talked about FIFA before as the parallel opposite approach that I'm mentioning. EA, at least from what I can remember, takes features away from their titles and then adds them back to a later date as a new feature. This came up in my conversation with one of my best friends and sports game expert that we previously mentioned, Kalen. He agreed with me by stating that I can honestly say that Madden hasn't had much unique change since about 2013. Since then, it has seemed like a glorified roster update with a few graphical improvements, and the usual recycled features taken out of the previous installments. I confirmed that FIFA was guilty of this earlier with the create a team function that they removed from the PS4 Xbox One generation of FIFA games, and are only now reintroducing on FIFA 22. I remember being pretty disappointed when I heard that they didn't want to add it to FIFA games because of the Frostbite engine or something dumb like that. My point is that EA Sports will take away some mechanics from their games, wait a few iterations, and then add it back as a new feature, hoping that we all forgot. I think that this approach adds more mediocrity to the already watered down experience that games like FIFA tend to be, and it's why they never feel fresh or new or interesting. Nothing's ever added. EA just horizontally builds by rearranging the foundational layer of FIFA, and very little ever gets added on top of it. Only recently did they start to add entirely new mechanics like press conferences and interactive transfer meetings, but that seems like it took an eternity. Despite all these small additions, the base building block of FIFA is the same and as stale as ever. And this has extended and poisoned their other titles, with Kalen going on to say, It may be difficult to pinpoint entirely what was taken out, but for Madden or EA in general, you can focus on things like create a play, create a team, create a stadium, create a fan, and etc. We were kind of cast aside because of the emphasis on Ultimate Team. He further elaborated by saying, "I swear as kids we were able to be a team owner, so I don't know why it was such a big deal when they did the franchise mode and talked about how you could be a team owner." I did a bit of research on this, and owner mode was originally introduced in 2004, so EA gallivanting it around as if it was this huge flagship feature is a perfect example of the point we were trying to illustrate. So I made some graphics. Let's pretend for a minute that we work at EA and we're on a team creating Sports Game 2008. We've built it up since its first iterations on earlier consoles, and we have the support of our community. We actively engage with them, and we're excited to put out our 2008 edition of the game because we just added player career customizations like tattoos and the ability to buy apartments or houses as you earn more money to really make the contracts feel concrete and real. We also have the ever popular owner mode that our fans can't get enough of, as well as a new movement mechanic that we believe will change the sports game genre. We've also added the ability for our players to make teams, fans, and stadiums so that they get to play the experience that they want to play. For our coaches and managers in the making, they'll have to deal with press conferences after games to add to the drama, and for the first time ever, 2 players can play for the same team at different positions in a fully realized co-op career. We put our heart and soul into this game, and we took some risks, but this will go down as a historical fan favorite. This will be an addition of the game that future players will draw features from that they desperately want added back, because we're about to fuck it all up. Now we're getting ready to drop our 2010 edition of the game. We've added the newly created Ultimate Team, in which players will have the ability to open packs and get players in a trading card-esque style game that they'll use to compete online with other players. But because we want this new feature to be the flagship feature, we made some cuts to steer players away from that icky single-player stuff and go into credit card debt instead as they gamble away real money on cards that have no real-life monetary value. So no more customizable player career. You can make a player and choose your starting team, but that's it. Who needs a social life aspect or things to spend your contract money on when you could just be playing Ultimate Team? What's that? Where's owner mode? Let's in the trash with the rest of the features we don't want to program in anymore. No more stadiums, press conferences, or co-op careers. But you can still build teams, fans, and we brought back this old mechanic that players loved. Okay, the last 5 years weren't great for our reputation. But who cares? We're making that sweet, sweet Ultimate Team coin. Our 2015 game is right on the horizon, and what? No, there isn't any more create a fan or create anything. No teams, nothing. We're using a new engine on the PlayStation 4, and we don't want to take the time. We can't figure out how to bring those features to this generation. Oh, also, still no owner mode or co-op career or press conference. Go run to Reddit now and tell them how evil we are and wipe those tears with a sweet digital scent of Ultimate Team cards. Maybe this year you can pull a Halloween striker that you've been looking for. Plus, we don't really want to hear any more of your complaints because we added that interactive story where your choices kinda matter, and you should be grateful for that. Alright guys, we learned our lesson. We've been labeled the worst company in America a number of times. Our user reviews are in the toilet, and we promise this year will be different. We added some new career mode stuff like press conferences. We never had those before. And interactivity between coaches and players. Owner mode? No, it's still gone. Co-op career? No. We are bringing back Create a Team, but we also did remove another feature. And we added a mechanic from 2008 that you guys all liked a lot. We got rid of Ultimate Team too. Psych! Grab your mom and dad's wallets, kids. We got coins for sale. How will you dominate your opposition without a gold 86 plus overall card that only has a 0.000001 chance of dropping, but you'll keep buying because eventually you'll hit it, right? Right. Give me your fucking money. This is why I believe that FM feels to have a different approach. They put in the work early on and took out things, but replaced them with improvements or better systems. Rather than add features and remove them on a constant basis or never really add anything at all, FM builds on the system that they have built for its long-running franchise so that Football Manager always feels like little additions are being made rather than nothing new. The base layer of FM is a strong layer to build upon, and rather than constantly messing with it and never really adding to it, FM uses its databases and years of data as a strong base to add to. If FIFA is just rearranging its foundation, Football Manager is building vertical, and while it may not always feel substantial every year, there are new flagship features that the team tries out each year to give each game flavor. And yeah, I could have made a cool graphic for FM like I did with EA Sports, but they don't need some cool flashy graphic, cool kid gamer bro shit. I'll let the features speak for themselves. Here they are on the screen. These are a few different iterations of the Football Manager series that all added or improved existing features to add to an overall better game. All because this base layer is so strong, one FM game can provide you with infinite entertainment, where FIFA caps you at 15-year career and then starts you over, grinding all over again. It's not fun. It's never fun. Each iteration of FM feels similar, but slightly improved. I look forward to the yearly releases of FM, especially when we got things like the 5-year vision for the club and when the youth hub was overhauled. These aren't things that are being stripped just to pretend like we improved them later. No, they're actual improvements. EA, take notes. This might seem like a weird way to title this section, but I genuinely enjoy that unlike other sports games, Football Manager is a simulation game where you don't have direct control of the players on the field. Sure, it can be impressive to watch a FIFA player obliterate his opposition with a well-timed skill move, but I feel like because of my impulse issues, when I have the option for me to take control and save myself from relegation by battering the AI, if that chance is given to me, I'm gonna take it. I like that FM puts you in charge of a club, but then you're in the passenger seat when it comes to on-field events. Football Manager, in a sense, is a game where you put your players in the best position possible to play at their peak performance. That's a lot of P's I just said. Holy fuck, I wrote that. Well, look at that alliteration. That was beautiful. You set up training sessions, you utilize the transfer market to buy and sell players to bolster your squad. You keep track of young players' progress so you're always aware of when they're ready to take the next step up. You re-sign players' contracts, you interact with your squad through discussions from time to time. You can praise them, scold them, or tell them that they'll never play for you again because they're piss poor, and the reason that you didn't avoid relegation and now your kids are gonna starve because the board's breathing down your neck, and how could they possibly know? Fuck. I'm sorry. It's old shit. Football Manager has all these aspects that you're in control of, but the beautiful thing is that to some degree, whatever happens on the field is out of your hands. Sure, you can shout at your players, but sometimes that's not enough for the 6'5" monster striker from Sweden when he's going to send a bicycle kick from 30 yards away that's going to soar past your keeper and knock you out of a competition. I've seen people complain about some of these kinds of moments, but believe it or not, some of these things happen in real life football. I love that this RNG sort of system is found here, and while you can certainly cheese it sometimes, it makes the wins feel better when you're on the good end of the stick and you slay a giant that you had no business playing on the practice field of, let alone in the knockout stages of the Champions League. I think this is the strongest pro to Football Manager. The community behind this series of games is so passionate and oftentimes hilarious. I have been a member of a Football Manager subreddit for players to post memes or updates on, and it is such an interesting one to lurk in. I love reading my fellow managers' long-winded updates, and I think all of the things that Football Manager does well are a huge reason for why the community is so tight. The fact that regions are so interesting makes seeing other people's fascinating, or hearing glorious victories of Sunderland winning a Champions League, or the brutal defeat of a PSG player losing to Sunderland in a Champions League final are inspiring and cool. I love seeing what other players are doing in their saves, and I often find inspiration in the things that I want to try in my new saves, but that's just the Reddit side of things. Let's admit it, Football Manager is hard. It's a difficult, steep learning curve game, and it's essentially learning how to read spreadsheets and make sense of all this shit. It's a game when you're winning, you feel amazing, and when you're losing, you want to put a hole through your monitor and sell your entire squad. I remember when I first got into Football Manager and I started the game up. As I said earlier, I was horribly overwhelmed with all the systems and the menus at times that I felt like I would never learn. So how does one go about learning the game of feet and balls? Well, we'll turn to a little known site that has been teaching doofuses like me to pretend like I know how to do things for a while. No, not that stuff. Yes, YouTube. A place where you can learn how to fix a car, give birth, and make an Egg McMuffin at home. You can also learn how to play Football Manager. Football Manager YouTube is extremely helpful, and specifically I want to shout out 2 creators that helped me learn the game and the editor. On the editor side of things, I want to acknowledge BIDØ, whose videos on how to create teams and leagues helped me fully understand just what I wanted to accomplish with the editor. He is also a super nice guy and makes interesting Football Manager content. On the learning front, I have to give credit to Zealand. Zealand's tutorials and the angles at which he attacks learning the game are very helpful. He explains what the best personality traits for regens are, he explains how to make it out of relegation form, even how to make your own tactic from scratch. Zealand is a Football Manager genius, and if it wasn't for him, I probably would have never learned how to play this game. Another creator I want to shout out is Kev over on Lullaby. I watched his series on Home FC a few years ago, and I loved every single episode of it. And while school has kept me away from watching as much YouTube content as I would like in general, he definitely deserves your attention. His series are easy to follow and almost feel like a TV show. I was invested in his teams, and I found myself getting a little spicy when he would lose a match or a fan favorite player. These 3 creators really helped me find my managing style and taught me the patience to be able to do a long-term one-team save. They all have unique styles of content, and they all deserve a watch, so please go check them out. Their links will be in the description below. Football Manager is one of my favorite game franchises of all time. It does what every other football game fails to see value in, which is evident by their attention to detail. I have spent thousands of hours on this series of games, and I only recently cut back as I moved out of my parents' house a few years ago, and I decided to take school more seriously. Football Manager is still a huge part of my life, and I wouldn't change it for the world. Not only is it a game that feels infinite in structure, Not only is it a game where you can do anything your wildest football dreams have ever imagined, it's a game that helped me reignite my love for the beautiful game when I had begun to hate it from my forced exclusion. I found a new love and a deeper love for football altogether, and it's all thanks to the beautiful work done by Sports Interactive. From a kid whose time in the sport was cut short by injury, thank you for giving me an outlet to find that ember again and restore it to a raging bonfire of passion for the sport that drives the world mad. Thank you guys for watching. It really means the world to me because this video took me 2 months to put together. I did research, I wrote a script, I trashed entire sections of it, I cried in the shower so you couldn't tell what was tears and what was water, but it was all worth it to see it come together. I love Football Manager and I hope that came across today. I mean, look how long this video is. And I feel like there's more I could say, but with FM we could be here all day. Anyways, huge shout out to Kay as he helped me put this information together and gave his perspective, which was invaluable to this whole process with his in-depth sports game knowledge. Thank you to Nadia and Jalen for supporting me and making this new content and letting me be a weirdo. And last but not least, thank you to our Plupa troops who make all of this worth it. You guys are amazing, and we love making content for all of you. Make sure you tell me what you think of this format because I have a ton more planned. Until next time, peace.